Your children didn't stop loving you. They just grew up. Every good parent spends years preparing their children for one moment. The moment those children no longer need them in the same way they once did. The strange part is, almost no one prepares parents for what comes after, because sooner or later, almost every parent finds themselves asking the same quiet question. When did everything change? Maybe by the end of this story, you'll realize that it was never the right question to begin with. The truth is, families rarely change overnight. It happens so quietly that we barely notice it while we're living through it. Sunday dinners slowly become holiday dinners. Long conversations turn into quick phone calls between meetings, errands, and children's bedtime routines. The house that once felt too small somehow begins to feel much too quiet. Not because anyone stopped loving anyone. Life simply kept moving. Your children build careers. They pay mortgages. They raise families of their own. Every responsibility they once watched you carry gradually becomes theirs. We understand all of that. We know they're busy. We know they're trying. We know they're building the very life we always hoped they would have. But the heart has never measured time the way calendars do. A father once told me that the hardest part of growing older wasn't retirement. It wasn't the gray hair. It wasn't the aching knees that greeted him every morning. It was realizing that one day, he had quietly stopped being the first person his son called. For years, his phone rang almost every Sunday afternoon. There was never an emergency. Sometimes they talked about football, sometimes about work, sometimes about a faucet that refused to stop leaking. Sometimes they talked about absolutely nothing at all. Years later, he couldn't remember a single one of those conversations. Not one. But he remembered exactly how every call had made him feel connected, needed. Like no matter how complicated life became, there would always be one place where he still mattered. Then life kept moving. His son got married. A few years later, he became a father himself. The phone calls never disappeared. They simply became shorter. An hour became 30 minutes. 30 minutes became 10. Sometimes the conversation lasted no longer than this. "Hi, Dad. Just checking in. Everything okay? Love you. I've got to run." Every time, the father smiled before hanging up. Then he quietly placed the phone back on the table and sat there for another minute. Not because he felt forgotten. Not because he blamed his son. He wasn't missing the phone call. He was missing the season of life it belonged to. Then one evening, much later than usual, the phone rang again. His son sounded exhausted. Not unhappy, just tired in the way only new parents understand. "The baby's been waking up every 2 hours," his son said with a tired laugh. "I honestly don't know how Mom and you survived this." The father smiled. "We didn't know either." For a moment, they both laughed. Then the conversation grew quiet. "You know," his son said, "I always thought you had everything figured out. I never noticed how tired you were. I never realized how much you worried. I guess kids aren't supposed to notice those things." The father looked out the window without answering. His son's voice slowly faded into the background as memories of his own life came rushing back. Long workdays. Driving home exhausted. Wondering if he was earning enough. Wondering if he was spending enough time at home. Trying, every single day, to become the father his little boy deserved. Back then, he had been so busy trying to become a good father that he had never stopped to wonder how often his own parents had waited for his phone calls. Perhaps that's one of life's quietest lessons. When we're young, we believe our parents will always be there. Then life fills itself with work, bills, marriage, children, and responsibilities we never imagined carrying ourselves. The years pass faster than we expect, and without anyone meaning for it to happen. One day, we discover we're living the very life our parents once lived. The father finally broke the silence. "You know, when you were little, I thought my job was making sure you always needed me." He smiled softly. "But maybe my real job was making sure that one day you wouldn't." His son didn't answer. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Then, almost in a whisper, his son said, I'm just hoping my daughter grows up feeling as safe as I always felt with you." The father closed his eyes. For one brief moment, 30 years disappeared. His grown son wasn't a father anymore. He was the little boy reaching for his hand before crossing the street. The little boy who believed his dad could fix anything. The little boy who fell asleep in the back seat after long family drives. The little boy who thought his father always knew the answer. When the call finally ended, the father didn't feel sadness. He felt something much quieter, gratitude. Because, for the first time in years, he realized he had been asking himself the wrong question. Not, "Why doesn't my son need me anymore?" but, "What kind of man did he become because I was there?" And suddenly, the silence no longer felt like proof that he had lost something. It felt like quiet evidence that everything he had spent a lifetime building was still alive. He had simply been looking in the wrong place. But fathers aren't the only ones who carry this quiet feeling. A mother once shared a story with me that I've never forgotten. It wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no heartbreaking goodbye, just an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. She was walking through the grocery store, following the same route she had followed for years: milk, bread, eggs, fruit. Without even thinking about it, she reached for a box of cereal. The same cereal her daughter had loved since she was 6 years old. She smiled, placed it into her shopping cart, and continued walking. Then, just a few steps later, she stopped. Her daughter hadn't lived at home for almost 10 years. For a few quiet seconds, she simply stood there with both hands resting on the shopping cart while life continued all around her. Children laughed. Shopping carts rolled past, and nobody noticed the woman standing quietly in the cereal aisle. But she noticed. She reached into the cart, picked up the cereal, smiled to herself, and gently placed it back on the shelf. Later that evening, she realized why that tiny moment had stayed with her all day. Love has a quiet way of leaving habits behind. Long after people leave home, their routines stay with us. Maybe you've experienced something similar. Maybe you've cooked far more food than you needed before remembering there are only 2 people sitting at the table now. Or perhaps you've looked toward a bedroom that has been empty for years, almost expecting someone to walk back through the door. Those moments seem almost invisible, yet somehow, they carry the weight of entire seasons of our lives. For years, both the father and the mother believed they were grieving the same thing: the phone calls, the noisy kitchen, the crowded dinner table, the laughter that once filled every corner of the house. But perhaps that wasn't what they missed at all. What they truly missed was the feeling of being needed. And maybe that's where so many loving parents become unfair to themselves. Somewhere along the way, we quietly begin believing that if our children no longer need us, perhaps we've become less important. But those two things have never meant the same thing. Being needed is not proof that you're loved. A toddler needs your hand because they can't cross the street alone. A teenager needs your advice because life still feels confusing. An adult may not need either, yet they can love you just as deeply, perhaps even more deeply, because real love was never meant to keep someone dependent. Real love gives someone the confidence to stand on their own. Every bedtime story you read, every scraped knee you kissed, every difficult conversation you worried about getting wrong, and every ordinary sacrifice that no one else ever noticed was quietly preparing them for a life they would one day be strong enough to live without you standing beside them every step of the way. Maybe that was never the tragedy. Maybe that had been the dream all along. A few weeks after that late-night phone call, the father drove to his son's house for dinner. Nothing special had been planned. It was simply another ordinary evening. His granddaughter sat at the kitchen table, completely absorbed in a picture she was coloring. His son stood at the stove preparing dinner while talking with his wife about work, school schedules, and all the little things that quietly fill an ordinary family evening. The room felt wonderfully familiar: running water, a pan gently sizzling, a little girl humming to herself. For a long moment, the grandfather simply watched. Years ago, he had been the one moving through a kitchen just like this, helping with homework, setting the table, answering 100 little questions before bedtime, wondering every day if he was doing enough. Now someone else carried those responsibilities. And somehow, that felt both beautiful and heartbreaking. Halfway through dinner, his granddaughter accidentally knocked over her glass of milk. The room fell silent. She froze. Her eyes immediately turned toward her father, waiting to see whether she was about to get into trouble. Instead, he smiled. He reached for a towel and said gently, "It's okay. Accidents happen. Let's clean it up together." For a brief moment, the grandfather couldn't move. Not because of the spilled milk, but because those were the exact words he had spoken to his own son more than 30 years earlier. Words he had completely forgotten. His son hadn't. No one had written them down. No one had tried to preserve them. Yet somehow, they had survived. Not inside a photograph, not inside an old family video, but inside the heart of a little boy who had quietly become a good father. The little girl smiled. She picked up another towel, and together, they wiped the table clean. Watching them, the grandfather finally understood something that had taken him an entire lifetime to learn. The little boy he thought he had lost had simply become someone's father. Nothing had been lost. It had simply changed hands. The patience he had once given his son was now being given to his granddaughter. The kindness he had tried to practice every single day had quietly found another home. The feeling of safety his son had once carried as a child was now becoming part of someone else's childhood. And in that ordinary kitchen, surrounded by nothing more extraordinary than dinner, crayons, and a spilled glass of milk, the father finally understood. The greatest success of a parent often feels like failure, because when you've truly done your job, your children no longer need you in the same way they once did. Not because they've stopped loving you, but because you've already given them exactly what they needed: the confidence to stand on their own, the courage to build a family of their own, the wisdom to comfort another person, and the quiet strength to become someone else's safe place. Children don't stop loving their parents. Life simply asks them to love more people. A husband, a wife, a son, a daughter. Their love doesn't become smaller. Their world simply becomes bigger. And somewhere inside that bigger world, your love is still there. One day, your son may not remember every conversation you ever had, but he'll remember how you made him feel. And one day, his children will remember how he made them feel. Perhaps that's how love survives. Not because we remember every word, but because someone remembers how we made them feel, and they pass that feeling on. Before we leave today, I'd like to ask you one simple question. What is one small thing your parents taught you that you still do today without even thinking about it? If someone came to mind while you were listening, and if you're fortunate enough that they're still here, don't wait for a birthday. Don't wait for the holidays. Call them this week. Because the conversations we think are ordinary so often become the memories we treasure most. Thank you for spending these quiet moments with me. Until next time, take good care of yourself. And don't wait too long to remind the people you love that they're still part of your story.